Okay, so now that I've introduced this concept of using count columns for calculated fields, I want to give you one more example that's a little bit more tangible in the case of this IMDb movie data. So I showed you how we could calculate something like revenue per title using that count column, that number of titles column, but that it wasn't particularly useful in this case because we could just take the gross revenue field and summarize it by an average to give us the same answer. I want to show you an example of a case where you can't simply change to an average and you have to use that count column. So I'm going to pull rating out so that we're looking at the data at the title level. You can see that the count is 1 in every case since each title represents one row in our raw data. And I want to pull in two more fields here. I'm going to pull in the cast Facebook likes as a sum and the movie Facebook likes as a sum. And now let's say that I want to create a new calculated field that sums these two fields together. So easy as going into my fields, items, and sets, creating a new calculated field called total Facebook likes, and the formula really as simple as cast Facebook likes plus the movie Facebook likes as a whole. And there you go. Let's format that as a number with 1,000 separator and no decimal points. And there you go. So I've got total Facebook likes. Right now we're at the title level, so this view makes perfect sense. I could sort or filter this however I want based on this new total Facebook like column, and it's as simple as that. Now where it gets a little bit more complicated is that if instead of title level, you're looking at this new calculated field at a higher level, like rating for instance. Now you can see these total Facebook likes bucketed by G, PG, PG-13, and R films. And if someone asked you, hey, which rating or which type of film tends to drive the most Facebook activity in terms of likes, it would be tempting to say PG-13 and R, but the problem is that this calculated field is still purely volume based. So it's true that PG-13 films did generate the most total Facebook likes across cast and movie likes, but we also know from the count column that PG-13 and R movies are much more prevalent in the sample than G or PG. So what we need to do is account for that and factor that count in so that we can translate this field into something that's a bit more apples to apples. So something like Facebook likes per title or average total Facebook likes. Now, whereas before with revenue, we could just change the summarization mode, because this is a calculated field, I don't have that option. So if I did have the option, it would be as simple as just changing to average, but because this is a calculation and calculations need to use sums, I can't do it. So I've got to go back into my fields, items, and sets and create a new calculated field called Facebook likes per film or per title or per movie or whatever you choose to use. And this will be defined simply as the total Facebook likes that I had defined divided by that counting column, that number of titles column. And that will do the exact same thing as summarizing this column as an average, just using the number of titles sum to do so. So press OK, and my new field pops up. And this now gives me a much more accurate comparison point of engagements per film. And we actually do see that the strongest performing does tend to be PG-13, followed by R, which does follow the volume trend, but that's kind of more of a coincidence than anything else. So that's an example of when you need to use a column like this count column when you can't just change the summarization mode to an average. So with that, let's go ahead and just drag these fields back out just to get to where we started with. And I'm going to pull title in, and there we go. So that's another example of using a count column as part of a calculated field.